is it comfortable being chairman of the all-party group on China? No, clearly not. But somebody has to do it if we're going to have this engagement. This was the first visit to China for over 5 years.
Which is an interesting point you make there, because people hearing the Electoral Commission's been hacked, that sounds very bad. But like you said, this is information which is widely available commercially and to political parties and so on. So what do you think is the point of it? Is it just it's more about demonstrating an ability to crack into an arm of the British state to show that they can hack the Electoral Commission, rather than it being particularly useful to the Chinese state having everyone's name and address?
Yes, so I don't know. We don't know. I think it's unlikely we're going to be told precisely who was organizing the hacking that we're going to hear about. It may be an organ of the state. We have to assume that that's probable, but it may not necessarily be. I think the point you make is absolutely right, that since this information is very widely available on its own, it doesn't really mean a great deal. But I raised specifically last week in Beijing with a whole series of different officials, including the number 4 ranking official in the Communist Party, Wang Huning, the fact that if China wanted to be perceived as more likable by the West, if it wanted to differentiate itself more from Russia, which is widely seen by us and elsewhere in Europe as an enemy of what we all stand for, then making sure, and actually I encourage them to put out statements, that they would not be interfering in any way with the general election this year could be an important part of trying to rebuild some confidence. So it will be interesting to see what their reaction to this is, because I'm quite sure the Foreign Office will be calling in Ambassador Zheng to remonstrate with him. And I very much hope that they will, commit now not to hacking and interfering with electoral processes or MPs' telephones, but we'll have to wait and see.
When you were in Beijing, did you get the sense that the Chinese state, the Communist Party, wanted to be perceived as more likable by the West? Is that a concern of theirs? Or actually flexing their muscles, having the West, whether it's Britain or America, on the back foot, talking about them, reacting to them, being frightened of them, is part of what they want? Do you think they never mind whether or not they do put out statements saying they don't want to interfere with our elections, do you think they want to be perceived as being more likable by the West?
I do, yes, because there are tangible effects on the Chinese economy from a gradual reduction in foreign investment in China, a reduction in the number of foreign tourists, of foreign business people living there, partly as a result of the very difficult conditions in the pandemic in China. And I do think that they want to be a key part of the international sort of rules and systems, and not being liked and being seen as hostile by Western countries is not part of the grand plan. So I do think that they're trying to improve this, but there is a difference, of course, between trying to improve perceptions by sort of being nice to everyone and actually taking actions that are going to make us look on China in a different way. So I spent quite a lot of time last week also very much encouraging China to play a positive role in trying to resolve the incredibly difficult Ukraine situation, because they have leverage on Russia that the rest of us don't necessarily have. And they also have a big stake in Ukraine. So they are interested in that. I think they've already said publicly they're going to try and join the conference that's being planned in Switzerland. And that could be one tangible way of really demonstrating that they are on the side of peace and not supporting those who are invading countries in the West.
And if they don't do all that, to what extent are you still comfortable being the chair of the all-party parliamentary group on China? Because if this was not a country, but a group that was accused of human rights abuses, military threats, and now hacking state bodies, we wouldn't even been having a conversation about an MP being the all-party parliamentary group for this group. So are you entirely comfortable being the chairman of a of an all-party parliamentary group, normally is to foster better relations with China, and actually maybe we shouldn't be fostering better relations with China. Are you comfortable still being the chairman of the group?
So there are two aspects to that question, Matt. The first one is, do we need to engage with China, the world's second biggest power, country with whom we now have 100 billion sterling for the first time of bilateral trade? We very much need to work with them on everything from health to the environment to net zero and so on. So do we need to engage them? Absolutely. In fact, when things are bad, and they're doing things that are not helpful, it's even more important to engage in order to make sure that we can get our messages and our points of view over directly with them, rather than sort of treating each other to megaphone diplomacy. But the second part of the question is it comfortable being chairman of the all-party group on China? No, clearly not. But somebody has to do it if we're going to have this engagement. This was the first visit to China for over 5 years. I was accompanied by Catherine West, the Labour spokesperson for Asia, David Lidington, former Deputy Prime Minister, and a few others. And I think it is important that we do have cross-party visits to try and engage on the issues where we can be positive and on those issues where we need to challenge.
And just funny, did you feel entirely comfortable and safe while you were there? Did you feel like you were, we've heard previously ministers talking about, going to hotel rooms and being aware that, their rooms are being gone through or their phones might be being targeted, so on. Did you feel that while you were there?
Yeah, look, we all took burner phones. You would not take your own laptops and telephones to China. So that really takes out the sort of technical threats. And the rest of it, they were extremely hospitable, as you would expect them to be. And it's interesting to see what Beijing is looking like 5 years on. They've made huge improvements in things like air quality and so on. So it's important that we note the differences that they're going through, the onshore wind turbines on the tops of the hills and mountains as you descend into Beijing, the numbers of electric vehicles, bicycles, all their taxis. On the environmental side, there are all sorts of interesting things to note, while also having these incredibly serious talks about more important things like geopolitics and whether they're are going to attack our electoral processes.
Which that's absolutely fascinating. Thanks so much for that. Really good to speak to you.
Thanks.